What if I told you that saving one life would cost me everything I thought I wanted? My wedding dress, my future, my carefully planned happily ever after, all gone in 4 brutal hours. But here's the twist. Losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. This is my story, and I promise you, it's not what you think. The night before my wedding, I couldn't sleep. Not because of excitement or pre-wedding jitters, but because something felt off. Have you ever had that feeling like your body is trying to warn you about something your mind hasn't figured out yet? My name is Dr. Maya Richardson, and I'm a trauma surgeon at Chicago Memorial Hospital. For 3 years, I'd been engaged to a man named Ethan Montgomery, heir to one of Chicago's oldest real estate dynasties. His family had money, influence, and a reputation they guarded like treasure. And me? I was the girl from the South Side who worked her way through medical school on scholarships and sheer determination. At 4:47 a.m. on what should have been the happiest day of my life, my phone exploded with sound. The emergency tone, the one that makes your heart drop before you're even fully awake. Dr. Richardson, we need you now. It was Dr. Patricia Chen, our chief of surgery. Her voice had that razor-sharp edge that meant one thing: someone was dying. I was in the resident's sleep room, having crashed there after my last shift ended at midnight. My wedding dress hung in my locker 3 floors down. My makeup artist was scheduled to arrive at the venue in 2 hours. 200 guests would be gathering at the Fairmont Grand Ballroom by noon. None of that mattered now. "What's the situation?" I asked, already pulling on my scrubs. 6-year-old boy, motorcycle versus SUV accident on I-290. Massive internal bleeding, ruptured spleen, possible liver laceration. He coded twice in the ambulance. The trauma team is overwhelmed. We've got 3 other criticals from a pileup. You're our best bet. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't. This is what I'd trained for. This is why I sacrificed sleep, social life, and countless personal moments over the past 8 years. Because when a child is dying, nothing else matters. Not weddings, not family expectations, not anything. I'm on my way. I texted Ethan, emergency surgery, critical case. We'll update soon. Love you. I should have called. Maybe things would have turned out differently, but I was already running down the hallway toward the OR, and every second counted. The boy's name was Aiden Cross, 6 years old with dark curly hair matted with blood and a Batman t-shirt torn down the middle by the paramedics. His father, a man named Vincent Cross, was in the hallway absolutely losing it, crying, praying, pacing like a caged animal. "Please," he grabbed my arm as I rushed past. "Please save my son. He's all I have. His mother died 2 years ago. If I lose him too..." I looked into his eyes and saw pure terror, the kind of fear that strips away everything fake and leaves only raw humanity. "I'll do everything I can. I promise you I will fight for your son like he's my own." I meant every word. The surgery was a nightmare, not because of anything we did wrong, but because of how bad the damage was. The impact had torn his spleen almost completely apart. Blood was pooling in his abdominal cavity faster than we could suction it out. His liver had a 3-inch laceration. One of his renal arteries was partially severed. For 4 hours, I stood at that table with my team, working with microscopic precision, clamping vessels, suturing torn tissue, removing the destroyed spleen piece by piece. My back screamed in agony, my fingers cramped, sweat dripped down my spine despite the cool OR temperature. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Dr. Chen came in twice to check on us. "Status?" I said, not looking up from the surgical field. "We're fighting harder." By hour 3, the anesthesiologist called out, "BP dropping, 80/50 and falling. Give him another unit and start dopamine. We're not losing him." At hour 3:45, something miraculous happened. His vitals stabilized. The bleeding was under control. The repairs were holding. "Vitals normalizing," the anesthesiologist said, and I heard the relief in his voice. "BP 110/70, heart rate steady at 95. I finally looked up at the clock. 9:23 a.m. My wedding was supposed to start in 2.5 hours. I changed in the staff bathroom, my hands still shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. The wedding dress, a simple, elegant ivory gown that I'd chosen specifically because it didn't require help to put on, felt heavy now, like it belonged to a different person, a different life. I had 63 missed calls, 47 text messages, 12 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. There wasn't time to explain. I would apologize in person, make them understand that I had just saved a child's life. Surely they would understand that. Surely Ethan would understand. I drove across Chicago in my wedding dress, my hair pulled into a messy bun, no makeup, running on 4 hours of sleep in 3 days. The Fairmont Grand Ballroom was in the Gold Coast, a 40-minute drive that I made in 25. The parking lot was packed. Good. Everyone was still waiting. I could still make this work. But when I walked toward the entrance, I saw them, 23 members of the Montgomery family, standing in a semicircle, blocking the doors like palace guards. At the center stood Ethan's mother, Victoria Montgomery, 60 years old, surgically enhanced within an inch of her life, wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than my car. Her face was a mask of cold fury. "Where have you been?" Each word was its own sentence, its own indictment. "Mrs. Montgomery, I'm so sorry. There was an emergency." "An emergency?" She laughed, sharp and cruel. "The only emergency I see is your complete lack of respect for this family and this day. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ethan's brother, Marcus, stepped forward. He was a lawyer, used to intimidating people. "You've humiliated us. 200 guests have been sitting in there for an hour and a half waiting. The caterers are furious. The photographer has another event. And you show up looking like this?" I looked down at myself. My dress was wrinkled from sitting in a car. There was a small blood stain on my wrist that I'd missed while washing up. I had no jewelry, no makeup, no veil. But I had clean hands and a clear conscience. I was performing emergency surgery on a 6-year-old boy. His name is Aiden Cross. He was in a motorcycle accident. He coded twice. If I hadn't been there— "We don't care," Victoria cut me off, her voice like ice. "We spent $85,000 on this wedding. $85,000, and you couldn't be bothered to show up on time because of your job?" The way she said job made it sound like I worked at a fast food restaurant. "Where is Ethan?" I asked, looking around. "I need to talk to Ethan." Victoria's smile was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Worse than any surgical complication, worse than any medical emergency. "Ethan," she said slowly, savoring each word, "is inside, exchanging vows with Madison." The world tilted. "What?" "Madison Pierce, you remember her? His ex-girlfriend from Harvard, the one who's actually suitable for this family. She's been here the whole time, Maya, waiting, ready, unlike you." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. "That's not possible. Ethan wouldn't—" "Ethan is a Montgomery," Marcus interjected, "and Montgomerys don't tolerate disrespect. You made your choice when you chose your career over him. He's made his." Through the glass doors, I could see inside the ballroom. White roses everywhere, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing. And at the altar, Ethan, my Ethan, standing next to a blonde woman in a white dress that wasn't mine. He was putting a ring on her finger. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. 3 years of my life, 3 years of trying to prove I was good enough for this family. 3 years of swallowing their comments about my humble background and my demanding career. 3 years of Ethan promising me that he'd stand up to his mother, that he'd choose me, that he loved me for who I was. All of it was a lie. "You need to leave," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness now, "before you cause an even bigger scene. Our family has a reputation to protect." Something broke inside me then. Not my heart, that would come later, but something deeper, my willingness to make myself smaller for people who would never value me. "You're right," I said quietly. "I should leave, but not because I'm ashamed. I'm leaving because I deserve better than this, better than all of you." I turned to walk away, and that's when I heard the voice. "Dr. Richardson?" I turned. A man in an expensive charcoal suit was walking toward me from the parking lot, tall, probably in his late 40s, with silver streaking his dark hair. His face was puffy and red from crying, but his eyes were full of something I hadn't seen from the Montgomerys. Respect. "I'm Vincent Cross," he said, extending his hand. "Aiden's father. I wanted to thank you. I wanted to do it in front of your family, at your celebration, so everyone would know what an incredible person you are." The Montgomery clan went silent. I could feel them calculating, trying to figure out who this man was. "Mr. Cross, this really isn't a good time." "I know who you are," Marcus said suddenly, his face going pale. "Vincent Cross, Cross Continental Properties. You own half the commercial real estate in Chicago." Vincent didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed on me. "I came to the hospital this morning when I heard about the accident. They told me you were supposed to get married today, that you came in anyway, that you spent 4 hours fighting for my son's life when you could have just sent him to another surgeon." "That's my job," I said softly. "Any surgeon would have done the same." "No," he shook his head firmly. "They wouldn't have. Dr. Chen told me you're the best trauma surgeon in this hospital, that you saved Aiden when he was minutes from death. She said if it had been anyone else, my son would be dead right now." Tears started rolling down my face. I hadn't cried yet, not when I saw Ethan with Madison, not when Victoria tore into me. But this man's gratitude broke something open inside me. "I heard what they said to you just now," Vincent said, his voice hardening as he finally looked at the Montgomerys. "Every word, and I want you to know something. The person you were screaming at, the person you called disrespectful, she's the reason my 6-year-old son is alive right now. She's the reason he'll grow up, go to school, fall in love, have a family of his own. And you're the reason she's standing here in a parking lot being told she's not good enough." Victoria opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "Dr. Richardson," Vincent said, turning back to me, "I have a car here. If you want, I can take you wherever you need to go. You don't have to stay here another second." I looked at the ballroom one more time, at Ethan, who still hadn't come out to face me, at his family, who made it crystal clear that I would never belong. And I made a choice. "Thank you, Mr. Cross. I'd appreciate that very much." We ended up at a quiet diner on the south side, not far from where I grew up. It was the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since 1985. Perfect. Vincent ordered us both breakfast, even though it was past noon. Eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice. I realized I hadn't eaten in over 20 hours. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, pushing scrambled eggs around my plate. "Thank you doesn't seem like enough." "You don't need to thank me," he said. "You saved my son. There aren't words for that kind of debt." "There's no debt," I insisted. "I was doing my job." "Your job was to show up at a wedding," he pointed out gently. "Instead, you showed up for a stranger's child. That's not just doing a job. That's who you are as a person." I started crying again. Ugly crying this time, the kind where your nose runs and your whole face gets red. The reality of what had just happened was hitting me in waves. "I'm sorry," I gasped. "This is so unprofessional." "Stop," he said firmly, pushing napkins across the table. "You're allowed to be human. You just lost your relationship, your wedding, everything you planned. You're allowed to fall apart." So I did. For 20 minutes, I sat in that diner booth and cried while Vincent Cross, billionaire property developer, sat quietly and let me have my breakdown without judgment. When I finally stopped, he said something I'll never forget. "My wife died 2 years ago. Cancer. Ovarian. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. I spent every day of those final 6 months watching the strongest person I knew waste away. And you know what I learned? Life doesn't wait for convenient timing. Crisis doesn't care about your plans. The only thing that matters, the only thing, is showing up when it counts. You showed up today. That family didn't deserve you." "I loved him," I whispered. "I really thought Ethan was different, that he'd stand up to his family." "Maybe he thought he would too, but thinking and doing are two different things. My wife used to say, "Watch how people behave when it's hard. That's who they really are." Today was hard, and Ethan showed you exactly who he is. He was right, and deep down, I'd always known it. All those times Ethan had said, "Let's not make waves," when his mother criticized me. All those dinners where I bit my tongue while his family made jokes about my medical school debt. All those moments where he chose the path of least resistance instead of standing beside me. Today was just the final brutal proof. "Where do you want to go? Home? Friend's place?" I gave him my mother's address. She lived in the same small house in Englewood where I grew up. If anyone would understand, it was her. My mother, Grace Richardson, opened the door wearing her garden gloves and her ancient Northwestern University sweatshirt, a gift from when I got my acceptance letter. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, shock, understanding, and then pure fury. "What did they do?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. I told her everything: the surgery, the parking lot confrontation, Ethan marrying Madison while I was still in my car driving to the venue. Grace Richardson was a retired elementary school teacher who had raised me alone after my father died when I was 8. She was 5'2", weighed maybe 110 pounds, and was the strongest person I'd ever known. "That boy," she said, her hands clenching into fists, "is lucky he's not standing in front of me right now. And that mother of his, Victoria, she better pray our paths don't cross." Vincent, who had insisted on walking me to the door, smiled slightly. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm Vincent Cross. Your daughter saved my son's life this morning." Grace looked him up and down, his expensive suit, his Rolex watch, his confident bearing, and nodded once. "You're the reason she missed her wedding." "Yes, ma'am." "Good," Grace said firmly. "That wedding needed missing. Come inside, both of you. I made a pot roast this morning thinking we'd have a celebration dinner tonight. Might as well eat it." And just like that, what should have been my wedding day turned into dinner with my mother and a man I'd just met, eating pot roast in my childhood home. It was the best meal I'd had in months. Over the next week, the Montgomerys launched what I can only describe as a campaign of harassment. Phone calls at all hours, texts demanding I return the engagement ring, which I'd already left in the hospital locker, voicemails from Victoria threatening legal action for breach of contract and emotional damages. The worst was the email from Ethan himself, sent 3 days after the wedding that wasn't. "Maya, I know you're angry, but you have to understand, my mother had a complete breakdown. She was literally clutching her chest, saying she couldn't breathe. The family doctor was called. Madison was there. She offered to step in just to calm everyone down. It wasn't supposed to be real. We can fix this. We can get the marriage to Madison annulled. Just call me back, please." I read it 5 times, looking for the apology that never came, looking for the part where he took responsibility for betraying me, looking for any indication that he understood why what he did was unforgivable. It wasn't there. I blocked his number, blocked Victoria's, blocked Marcus's, blocked every Montgomery family member who tried to contact me. My mother was my fortress during those days. When they showed up at the house, yes, they actually showed up, she stood on the porch with her arms crossed and said, "You have exactly 5 seconds to leave before I call the police and file a restraining order." They left. Vincent called every few days just to check in, never pushy, never demanding, just there. "How's Aiden?" I always asked first. "Getting stronger every day," asking when he can meet the doctor who saved him. "Soon," I promised, "when I'm not such a mess." "You're not a mess," Vincent said firmly. "You're healing. There's a difference." 2 weeks after the non-wedding, I was called into a meeting with Dr. Chen and the hospital's legal counsel. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be good. "Dr. Richardson," the lawyer started, "we've received a formal complaint from the Montgomery family. They're alleging that you abandoned your professional duties, that you used your position to cultivate relationships with wealthy patients, and that your actions on the day of your scheduled wedding constituted gross negligence." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's insane," I said, trying to keep my voice level. I didn't abandon anything. I performed emergency surgery on a critical patient. It's all documented. We know, Dr. Chen said quickly. We've already pulled all the records: surgical logs, nursing notes, the trauma team documentation. Everything supports your version of events, but we have to go through the formal investigation process. The next 3 days were hell. I had to sit through interviews with hospital administration, recount every decision I made during Aiden's surgery, explain my timeline minute by minute. The Montgomery's lawyer showed up, a shark in an expensive suit, trying to paint me as negligent and opportunistic, until Vincent Cross walked into the hearing. I'm here to provide testimony, he said, handing over a formal statement about Dr. Richardson's conduct and the circumstances surrounding my son's treatment. The Montgomery lawyer went pale. You don't challenge someone like Vincent Cross in a legal setting, not unless you want to lose. Vincent's statement was devastating in its simplicity. He outlined Aiden's condition when he arrived at the hospital. He documented the timeline of the surgery. He detailed the conversation with Dr. Chen about my skill level and the fact that I was scheduled to be married that day. He provided a sworn affidavit from Aiden's pediatrician stating that without my immediate intervention, Aiden would have died. And then he did something I didn't expect. He included a detailed account of what he witnessed in the Fairmont parking lot: Victoria's words, Marcus's threats, the fact that Ethan married someone else while I was still en route to the venue. The hospital's legal counsel looked at the Montgomery lawyer and said, "I think we're done here." The investigation was closed within an hour. No findings of misconduct, no disciplinary action. The complaint was dismissed with prejudice, meaning the Montgomerys couldn't refile it. I walked out of that meeting room and found Vincent waiting in the hallway. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Yes," he replied, "I did." 3 months passed. Spring turned to summer. I threw myself into work, taking every shift I could, grateful for the distraction of medicine's constant demands. Slowly, the pain began to fade. Not disappear, I don't think that kind of betrayal ever completely leaves you, but it became manageable. I stopped checking Ethan's social media, stopped wondering what he was doing, stopped caring. Vincent became a regular presence in my life. Not romantic, neither of us was ready for that, but he'd show up at the hospital with coffee during my night shifts. He'd invite me and my mother to dinner at his house, where Aiden would tell me about his soccer games and his reading assignments. My mother, who trusted no one after watching me get hurt, gave Vincent her approval. "That man," she said one night, "shows up. Every time. No excuses, no drama. Just shows up." In July, Vincent asked me to accompany him to a charity gala. "As friends," he clarified quickly, "I'm on the board. It would be nice to have someone there who understands medicine. We're raising money for the Children's Hospital." I said yes. The gala was at the Four Seasons, black tie, Chicago's elite gathered in their finest, writing 5-figure checks and pretending to care about sick children. And there, across the room, I saw them. Ethan and Madison, now officially married according to the society pages. She was wearing a diamond necklace that probably cost more than my annual salary. He looked exactly the same, handsome, polished, empty. Our eyes met across the ballroom. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Ethan started walking toward me. "Maya," he said, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. "Please, can we talk?" "No," I said simply. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Madison doesn't understand me the way you did. My mother pushed me into this. I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected. "When I needed you to stand beside me, you chose the easy path. That's not a mistake. That's character." "I still love you." I looked at this man I'd once planned to spend my life with and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, just a calm, settled certainty that I dodged a bullet. "No, Ethan, you love the idea of me, the girl who would bend herself into whatever shape you needed. But that's not who I am, and honestly, I'm grateful you showed me that before we actually got married." Vincent appeared at my elbow, not possessive or territorial, just present. "Everything okay here?" he asked quietly. "Everything's fine," I said, smiling. Ethan was just leaving. And he was. A year after the non-wedding, I stood in front of a mirror in a very different setting. Small courthouse, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. My mother beside me, fixing the color of my simple cream-colored dress. Vincent waiting at the front with Aiden, who was thriving, a healthy, energetic 7-year-old who called me Maya, but was starting to slip in the occasional mom. No fancy ballroom, no 200 guests, no pressure to be perfect, just the people who mattered. "Ready, baby?" my mother asked. I thought about the journey that brought me here, the emergency call that shattered my carefully planned life, the parking lot confrontation that showed me who people really were, the months of healing and rebuilding, the slow, steady growth of something real with someone who showed up every single time, no matter what. "Yeah," I said, smiling, "I'm ready." The ceremony took 10 minutes. The judge's words were simple and sincere. Vincent's vows were straightforward. "I promise to show up, to stand beside you, to never make you choose between who you are and who I need you to be." Mine were equally honest. "I promise to be myself, to trust you with my truth, to build a life where love doesn't require sacrifice, just partnership." When we walked out of that courthouse, married, there were no photographers waiting, no society pages reporting, no family drama, just peace. That evening, we had dinner at my mother's house, pot roast again because some traditions are worth keeping. Aiden fell asleep on the couch halfway through dessert. My mother told embarrassing stories about my childhood. Vincent held my hand under the table. Later, as we drove home to the house we'd bought together, the one with room for my mother and Aiden and the future we were building, Vincent asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about it, honestly, about the wedding that never happened, about Ethan and the Montgomerys and the life I'd almost had. "None," I said. "Not a single one." Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted gives you space to find what you actually need. That emergency call didn't ruin my life. It saved me from the wrong one. And I would make the same choice every single time. 2 years later, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ethan. I debated throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won. "Maya, I'm writing this from a hotel in Boston. Madison and I are divorcing. It turns out marrying someone to please your mother is a terrible foundation for a relationship. Who knew? My mother had a stroke 6 months ago. She's recovering, but it's been a wake-up call for the whole family. We spent so much time protecting an image that we forgot to be actual people. I think about that day in the parking lot all the time. I think about how I let my family bully you, how I took the easy way out instead of standing up for what was right, how I married someone I didn't love because I was too weak to say no. I'm not writing to ask for another chance. I know I don't deserve one. I'm writing to say I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry for every moment I made you feel like you weren't enough. Because you were always too good for us. You were always the one who got away. I heard you got married to Vincent Cross, Aiden's father. I hope he knows how lucky he is. I hope he treats you the way I should have. I hope you're happy, Maya. You deserve it more than anyone I know. Ethan." I read it twice, then I folded it carefully, put it in a drawer, and never looked at it again. Because the past doesn't get to intrude on the present when you've built something real. And what I had, what Vincent, Aiden, my mother, and I built together, was real. That's how this story ends, not with revenge or vindication or the dramatic satisfaction of watching my ex fall apart. It ends with choosing myself, with understanding that integrity isn't something you compromise for convenience, with learning that the right people will value you for exactly who you are, without you having to shrink or apologize or sacrifice the parts of yourself that matter most. It ends with me, standing in a hospital OR 2 years later, saving another life, knowing that my husband is at home with our son, never once resenting the fact that my work is demanding and unpredictable, because that's what real love looks like. And I almost missed it, all because I was trying to force myself into a life that was never meant for me. So here's my question for you. What are you holding on to that's keeping you from what you actually deserve? What relationship, job, or situation are you enduring instead of living? Because sometimes the best gift life can give you is the courage to walk away from the wrong thing, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you're standing in a parking lot in a wedding dress, watching your entire future collapse. Sometimes that's not the ending, it's just the beginning. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, drop a comment below telling me what spoke to you most. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between what people expected and what your conscience demanded? I'd love to hear your stories. And if you want more real-life narratives about courage, integrity, and finding yourself when everything falls apart, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story. Keep choosing yourself. It's always worth it.